Hey everyone, how you doing, and welcome to Tierland, where everything's ranked based on whether it's S tier or complete dog shit. Today we're going to be going over something that's a little personal to me, and that is the wonderful land of VR headsets. Now, as some of you may know, I might not be able to do videos like these if I didn't have VR tech, so I'm not an authority, but I like to think I know a little more than the average person would. And of course, everything in this video is of my own opinion, which means it's not fact. Do your own research before you make any purchases or make any informed decisions on anything. Please also understand that I'm ranking these headsets based on how they function today, not when they first came out, because it's not those days anymore. It's today. So why don't we get started? Starting off with a fairly basic headset, it's something that I've used for multiple years and use fairly often nowadays, which is the HP Reverb G2. Now, I'm going to be ranking this one based off of its V2 version. I have the V1, so some of my information may be a bit incorrect. Even though this only came out a couple years ago, I'd still say it's a pretty decent buy even for today. You can normally pick this thing up for around $450, which isn't that bad for 2K per eye displays. Granted, they only run at 90 Hz, so it's not nearly as good as, say, something like the Valve Index, but it's still pretty good. Head strap design is very comfortable. The headset speakers are the exact same as the one on the Valve Index, so they sound absolutely fantastic. The mic is a bit loud, however, you can adjust for that in software settings. Although one of the cons is that it does run Windows Mixed Reality software, which, for me, does not typically work the best all the time. And it also does not like to play nice with Steam VR Home. Like, seriously, every time I tried to get it to run, it would just constantly freeze and stutter, making it almost impossible to launch a game. The stunning visual fidelity and the amazing head strap are both great pluses for this headset. However, the minor setbacks such as the Windows Mixed Reality software and the minor software bugs when handling Steam itself are gonna take it down a couple notches. Overall, this headset is pretty good, but it's not perfect, so I'm gonna have to put it on the A tier. Next up, unfortunately, most of you have probably used this headset before, and that is the Google Cardboard. I'm pretty sure most of this doesn't need an explanation for you guys, but I'm gonna go ahead with it anyway. This was the thing that kickstarted the popularity for a good amount of VR users such as myself. I mean, almost free access to the VR industry just for consumers like us, and we didn't even need a PC to do it. That sounds like a great deal on paper, however, most of the software was roller coaster simulators, really bad horror titles, and you couldn't even connect it to a computer if you wanted to. So that means you were relegated to using mostly poorly made apps. And the fact that it didn't even look that good, never mind the fact that this thing was made out of frickin' cardboard. I'm pretty sure you all know what I'm gonna put for this, but this thing's going straight in the F tier. So next up on our list, we have Pimax as a whole. You might be wondering why I'm not covering all of their headsets. Well, first of all, Tierland doesn't cover all of them. But second of all, Pimax has just made way too many products for me to cover in one video. Aside from that, you can pretty much boil down all of their products to just a couple words. Really awesome half-baked ideas. Now, I myself own a 5K Super, and I can tell you this. The 5K in the name is a lie. The 120 degrees field of view is awesome, and the software is really buggy. Now, on most of their headsets, it's not a lie. They genuinely do have a 120 degrees field of view. It's absolutely incredible how much of the game I can see. However, unless you're buying something like an 8KX, the most amount of what you're going to be seeing in that 120 degrees field of view isn't really going to be that good. I mean, the resolution is arguably worse than the Quest 2. But that's just a 5K Super. Obviously, if you got an 8KX or one of their new headsets, such as the 12K or the Crystal, it's probably going to be a better experience, but that's just what I had to deal with. And don't even get me started on PyTool, that's such a mess. See, here's the thing. PyTool is Pimax's own software getting their headsets to work with your computer. The problem is that they still advertise PyTool on their website. Now, that might sound kind of weird, but Pimax doesn't use PyTool anymore. They use their own system that's built into their brand new client, which is also advertised just as much as their regular PyTool program. The newest version of PyTool that's still advertised on their website does not work. I can't get it to initialize my headset unless I install an older version and then reinstall the new version. That really isn't that helpful. This was until I discovered the Pimax tool, which made things significantly easier. And since I saw the portal coming up soon, I gotta admit I'm really worried about this thing. Pimax has had multiple opportunities to make the definitive VR headset. However, most of these small drawbacks have caused them to make very substandard headsets. So for these reasons, I'm gonna have to put them on the C tier. Next up, we have the Oculus Rift S. Now, this headset is honestly just sad. For one, it's the last headset in a line of headsets that absolutely pioneered the technology of VR. but it just genuinely wasn't a good option even when it came out. I especially wouldn't recommend it nowadays, even if it is cheap. And this is including but not limited to the headset's refresh rate is only running at 80 Hz when most headsets are now running at 90 as a default. Controllers are tracked using inside-out cameras, even though it's a wired headset. The display resolution really isn't that impressive when you could just buy a Quest 2. The constant microphone issues that the Rift S still has to this day, the fact that it's not even made by Oculus, and the numerous software issues I've seen people have with it are honestly just depressing. But it's still technically better than a Google Cardboard because it functions, so I at least have to give it that. Even with most of these issues, I'm gonna have to put it in the D tier. Next up, we got the granddaddy of all virtual reality. Dubbed VR32 before its release, the Virtual Boy was the very first widely consumer virtual reality headset to hit market. I'm sure most of you know the problems with this, but I think it's obvious back in the 1990s they did not have the technology to properly make virtual reality, because everything was still too focused on expensive lenses instead of improving the software. So because of this, Nintendo cheaped out on it, and there's red anaglyph everywhere, which bright red lights going straight into your eyes, not sure if you knew, but that hurts. And the fact that they put goggles on a stand, this just has to be the most uncomfortable thing I've ever seen. I mean, it's more uncomfortable than that, and it's a piece of cardboard. This thing was just an overall fail, and the fact that it physically hurts you is just unforgivable. This thing is going in the F tier. Next up, we've got the headset that very well may have saved it back in 2019, and that is, of course, the Valve Index. Now, I don't have a Valve Index, but I do have its controllers. But I can tell you from what I've heard from most of my friends who do have them, it's a very comfortable and still very useful headset. Of course, since it uses laser-tracked base stations at the corners of your room, the controller accuracy is almost immaculate. However, the resolution is starting to get up there in terms of age. I mean, the Quest 2 technically outpaces it by a little bit. But the extra FOV in comparison to other headsets is still pretty nice. The IPD adjustment is very useful. The head strap is super comfortable, the head speakers sound amazing, and the microphone quality is also very good. However, for $1,000, you could probably get yourself something a little bit better, but it's not a terrible choice. However, at this rate, I probably would wait to see what comes out in the next 1 or 2 years, because you might think you wasted your money if you bought it. Overall, this headset's very good. However, because some of its features are starting to show their age, and the headset's a little bit overpriced nowadays, I'm gonna have to put it in the B tier.
Nice throw!
Next up, we've got the headset that some of you in the audience are probably using right now, and admittedly this whole time I've been praising a lot. And that, of course, is the Oculus Quest 2. I'm not going to call it Meta, my box says Oculus.
Facebook.
This headset is still a pretty decent beast nowadays. New features are constantly getting added to it, and the ones that it has are constantly getting improved on, which is very nice to see. However, the aging XR2 chip that's inside of these things is starting to show its age a little bit. However, the tracking quality of the controllers and the headset's overall versatility when it comes to PC and standalone VR are very impressive. Now, does it justify $400 to $500 in today's money? That's really up to you. If you need to go out and buy a VR headset right now at this very moment, this is the only one that you theoretically could go to a store and grab. I'm actually using it right now to record this video. However, I still would urge you to wait, just in case something new comes out, especially since the Quest 3 might come later this year. Plus, with some much needed mods, you can make this thing a very comfortable and long-lasting headset. And since this thing can go over wireless, that means that me, with my entire setup, I can do whatever I want without having to worry about any wires of any kind. This, of course, being my favorite thing about the headset. Not having wires is a pretty big plus. Since this headset is still a pretty decent buy, I'm gonna have to put it in the A tier. And now we've got the Oculus Go. Where do I even start with this thing? Even when it came out, it was just a VR viewer. You couldn't play any games on it. And it came with a admittedly crappy controller. Now, the good news is since it died off, John Carmack pushed for its software to be open sourced, so that way people could still use it if they wanted to, which they did. But considering the fact that you can't even buy this headset anymore, it's a dead headset. There's no reason to go get one. F tier. Now we've got one of the headsets that helped kickstart the revolution, and was subsequently the first Steam VR-based headset. Obviously, I'm talking about the HTC Vive. Now, the Vive overall, when it came out, was a pretty decent headset, considering it was the only Steam VR headset. But it's 2023, and at this point, I really don't consider it a good idea to go get one. The main reason, of course, being its age. However, there is more to it than just that. The overall quality of the display is really not that great. The array of pixels in the screen is arranged in a very awkward pattern, and it can lead to very, very blurry and uncrisp images. And don't even get me started on the Vive wands. They are still the worst Steam VR based controller I think I've ever seen, second only to the Pimax sword controllers. Don't get me wrong, they are great for people who just got into VR, but if you're anyone past that, it is a no-go. The lack of thumbsticks and face buttons is honestly just a complete deal breaker. And for the record, I wouldn't recommend any of HTC's newer headsets either, including the XR Elite. Not only do those also come with wands, but the ones that don't have bad tracking, such as the Vive Cosmos and Cosmos Elite. And we all know how those turned out. Not a bad headset because it functions, but it really isn't that great of a choice today. D tier. Next up, we've got the Nintendo Switch VR. I'm gonna be totally honest with you, I completely forgot this was a thing. And the fact that it's basically just a Google Cardboard / Pimax portal, I really can't imagine this thing being very good. F tier. The Oculus Quest 1. Now, this was the very first tracked headset that I ever tried. When I did, my mind was absolutely blown. However, I'm sure some of you have seen in recent news that the Quest 1's life support was essentially just unplugged. And the fact that they're not open sourcing it because John Carmack no longer works at Oculus is not really a good sign. I guess the only saving grace to this is that you can plug it into a computer. So in that sense, it's barely functional, and you can't even buy new ones anymore. So it's kind of put me in an awkward spot as to where to put this. I'm putting it in D tier, but only because you can still use it as a PC VR headset. You remember when I was talking about the Vive Cosmos? Well, that's our next headset. This thing honestly is just sad. It was one of HTC's last forays into the consumer market, and it was an ultimate failure. Subpar tracking quality, unimpressive displays, and the stupid Halo visor that flips up gives this thing an absolute F. You should not buy this. Here's one for you console gamers out there, the PlayStation VR. As for this thing, if you can get anything else, please do. The way that this thing accomplishes VR is borderline not VR. For one, it uses the PlayStation Move controllers from 2008? Incredibly outdated motion controllers. You can only face one way because it requires you to use the PlayStation Sight camera. One camera, by the way. And the fact that the displays run at a decreased refresh rate and barely 1080p per eye is just absolutely unimpressive. Don't get me wrong, it helped bring console VR to market. But as for how it performs nowadays, this is just really not a good choice. Again, I am not dissing the legacy of this thing or what it did. But as for a purchase nowadays, I just cannot recommend it to any person. It's going in the F tier. Some of you might have noticed I didn't put any headsets in the S tier, and that's for mainly two reasons. No VR headset is perfect. Companies can't get their crap together enough to actually make a perfect headset, so we all know that's not going to happen. And two, if there was a perfect VR headset, don't you think everybody would be buying one? Anyways, that was my list. What did you think of it? Did I have some hot takes? Was I wrong on a couple of things? Let me know in the comments below. I really would love to hear your guys' opinions because they're very helpful. Who knows, you might even help me change my opinion. Anyways, guys, I really appreciate all the support. I love you all so much. I'll catch you in the next one.